The first item on the agenda is approval of the May 1st, 2017 meeting minutes. Is there anyone like to move to approve those?
Motion to approve.
A couple seconds. All right, got a motion from Commissioner Hurt to approve the minutes, seconded by Commissioner Payden. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Are there any abstentions? All right, motion passes. The second item on the agenda is general public comment. This is a period for anyone from the public to address the Transportation Commission as long as the item's not already on our agenda. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Please come to the podium there, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Nicole Allensworth.
Okay.
And how do I push play again? Okay.
There you go.
But the numbers show that more than 1,000 people are injured each week by distracted driving accidents.
KAKE's Brian Ramsdale shares the story of one woman lucky to be alive after she sent a text message, and the message she now has for everyone else.
It's a normal day in Nicole Allensworth's home.
I have a back pay coming for my disability.
She's budgeting for her next week's expenses, but her life totally changed 2 years ago after a texting and driving crash almost killed her.
I don't think I'll ever be 100% better, and maybe 75%.
She was driving her Toyota Corolla to her junior college outside of Lawrence in 2015, and she was texting and driving.
And I end up hitting a cone.
She lost control, hit a semi. Her Toyota ended up looking like this, smashed so bad the passenger side door was pushed into the center of the car. The crash landed Allensworth in the hospital for over a week. She suffered a traumatic brain injury.
So I had 3 weeks of my life taken from me that I don't remember at all.
Because of her brain injury, she has a hard time remembering, and an already existing leg injury was made worse. She says every day she wants to go back in time and tell herself, put down the phone.
Oh yeah, definitely so.
Texting and driving is becoming an addiction. Allensworth calls it an epidemic. So many people are doing it that the Centers for Disease Control is tracking how many people are killed in distracted driving accidents, citing texting and driving as a main cause. 8 people every day are killed in distracted driving accidents, and over 1,100 other people are injured. Making the problem worse, it's hard for law enforcement to go after people texting and driving without requesting phone records from cell phone providers. But Sheriff Lieutenant Lynn Denning says they have a way around that.
We tell our deputies to cite for the violations that they can observe.
While a deputy can't always prove that you were texting and driving, they can ticket you for other reasons, such as crossing the center line, swerving around in your lane, or even causing an accident, whether they see you texting or not.
Those can all be cited regardless of whether you're texting and driving, but those are pretty common in texting and driving type tickets.
Some communities have actually taken it a step further when it comes to cell phones in your cars. Here in Manhattan, most people think of Kansas State University, but what you should be thinking is they have a policy in place you can't even hold the cell phone up to your ear while you're driving. The sign says it all, hands-free driving citywide. The policy went into effect in 2010. Since then, Officer Alexander Robinson with the Riley County Police Department says the number of car accidents are down.
Our traffic accidents since 2010 have declined by 20%.
While Officer Robinson says there are other factors at play, the hands-free policy in Manhattan is working, keeping people off their phones.
There's not a...
I came to talk to you today because tomorrow I'm addressing the city commissioners, the mayor, and the city mayor and the vice mayor, and hopes to passing a stricter law for cell phone use and vehicles. The reason I'm passionate about this is, like they said, I ended up with a traumatic brain injury, and I'm so thankful. And it actually wasn't a semi who hit me; it was another car. But I'm very thankful that the man that hit me was not as injured as badly as I was. With this being stated, I am advocating for a stricter law. If we here were to have a stricter cell phone use and driving law here in Lawrence, it makes me wonder how much of an improvement we can have, especially regarding traffic accidents. Manhattan, like they said, has declined by 20% in traffic accidents since they enforced an additional ordinance of being hands-free in July of 2010. I believe that it will be greater than improvement here in Lawrence. In agreement with Dave Cronin, as we talked to have talked before, We have to be better than Manhattan. I have brought a petition for anyone here willing to sign. I am staying behind after, so people are willing to have a chance to do so. Nothing has been done in our state since this law has been passed in 2010. The time is now to reduce traffic accidents and make the roads safer for the public. My next step is the state law.
Thank you very much for speaking today. Is there anyone on the commission that has a question of Ms. Allensworth? All right, thank you, and appreciate you staying after. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address us today? Carol?
My name is Carol Bowen. I live on Dakota Street, which is a block south of Checkers. I am a lifelong pedestrian. I have always walked to work. I walk everywhere, even now. I have some comments. I've been following your meetings on YouTube. I really appreciate them up there, so I don't have to come to meetings all the time. Thank you for doing that for me. I've been listening and have been concerned about the discussions of the overall makeup of the commission. Not concerns. I want to give my input. I know you folks have been wondering where you want to take this. I want to emphasize that the commission is the result of a grassroots effort from many people in the community with many different concerns. Mine happened to be pedestrian at the time, but it could have just been as easily traffic in my neighborhood. There are lots of people who are really concerned about that kind of thing. And those issues are not really appropriate for the old Traffic Safety Commission. The old Traffic Safety Commission was more of a technical body. They reviewed the engineering and they did follow the recommendations of engineering whenever they could. I think this discussion needs to be broader than that. For people like me off the street, the Planning Commission, they have big projects, big projects. My little concerns about my neighborhood really do not fit on their agenda and are not appropriate. They don't have time for that. Not only that, most of their discussion is on new development, not old. So if you live in an established neighborhood, you don't have anywhere to go. The Traffic Safety Commission, as I said, was more of a technical body, so they really didn't get into the kind of issues you get into in the neighborhood either. So I've been looking forward to this commission for a very long time, and I'm surprised it happened as fast as it did, but the momentum is there, and I think we should run with it. I guess the rule of thumb should be that the transportation should be thought of within the context of land use. An example of that is 19th Street. One of your first agenda items, a woman came up and said, "What about our neighborhoods?" Yes, what about the neighborhoods? The street is improved, but what is the impact on the neighborhoods? How are we handling that? And taking care of the street does not take care of the neighborhoods. There are several documents I recommend that you read. One is a transportation plan. I know there's a new draft. I don't know if it's complete or not, but you folks should be reading the transportation plan. You should also read the transportation chapter in Horizon 2020. There's also a lot of notes on the update to Horizon 2020 that address established neighborhoods more, so it'd be good to read that as well. Crash reports. There are crash reports for cyclists and crash reports for pedestrians. It would be good to look at those things to help you in an overall context. And because of the cell phone issue that just came up, I'd like to point out that there's a KU faculty member that has done a lot of research on the impact of cell phone use while driving. He did speak to the Traffic Safety Commission years back, and at that time we found that the only thing we could control with the cell phone was to make it a secondary offense. So it does, you really do have to kind of push that one up to the state level, anything you can do in the way of cell phones. I could give you lots of examples, I suppose. One in our neighborhood, we don't have a whole lot of traffic, but when we do, it behaves very badly because it's trying to avoid Louisiana 23rd Street light. It does that because it doesn't want to stop at all. We don't have sidewalks, we have parked cars, and we have a right to park cars, we're all residential streets. And those cars will speed through. In spite of children on their bicycles, in spite of me on my tricycle, in spite of people walking, and there are a lot of us out there in the street. I guess that's all I can think of off the top of my head. I probably could stay up here all night talking about it. But I do encourage you to think in a more comprehensive way. I know some of you have already started to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the commission? Please come up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brendy Latari. I live at 1746 Mississippi Street, which is right on the corner of 18th and Mississippi. And our neighborhood, the University Place neighborhood, is currently getting our permanent traffic calming circles that we've been working on. Some of the neighbors for a long time, 14 years, I think, roughly, or more. And so I'd really like to thank the department and the engineers that have been working hard on that. And all of us are looking forward to having the improvements up and running, and it's, you know, it's really going to improve our neighborhood. I have one very specific request pertaining to one of the intersections, not all four. There's 4 of them being done, plus a traffic hump is being installed on Louisiana Street. My son that lives with me is 17, going to be a senior at Lawrence High School this fall, and is totally blind. And so uses that intersection to get from our house to school every day, twice a day, you know, to school and back. And I'm really concerned about having the stop signs gone for him to be able to cross the intersection at 18th and Indiana. We've looked at lots of different routes. There just really isn't any better way to get across 19th Street but to use the intersection at Louisiana and 19th. And incidentally, the city was incredibly great to put up audible pedestrian signals for him there, just for his use, which have been working great for him. So what I would like to request is, even though the traffic calming circles are being installed at 4 locations in our neighborhood, and Mr. Cronin and other city representatives have made it clear that it's not city policy to have a calming circle with stop signs. I'm asking for you all to recommend leaving the stop signs in place at the 4-way stop at 18th and Indiana, just specifically for my one pedestrian of concern, so that he can safely cross twice a day, or even more often if he can take advantage of open lunch, and just get there safely. I could probably go on for a while about what the traffic is like there, but I'm sure you all have been hearing about this project for a while, maybe. You know, we're just south of KU campus, just north of Lawrence High School campus, bounded by Veterans Park and KU campus to the east and west. So we have some kind of unique traffic patterns, unique to different seasons and times of day and day of the week. So during the really busiest time, mornings and afternoons is when my kiddo is crossing there. So that's my request. With me here is Rachel Hayden, and she is the school district's teacher for the visually impaired and certified orientation and mobility specialist. She's the one who has worked with him tirelessly for years, really working on the route from our house to Lawrence High, and then any number of bajillion other things she's worked with him on over the years. And so she could talk to you about the specifics of what it's like for a blind person cross there, and also just what her certification recommends for blind pedestrians.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Well, the main thing is just having the calming circle would make it an uncontrolled intersection for my students. And so it raises the risk a bit for him. I'll go out there for sure and do lessons with him and take data on how he's doing. But the stop signs just add that extra level of safety for him. So.
I guess, yeah, I did want to make one other point, and that is when we got the original temporary calming devices in the neighborhood, this wasn't such an issue, but now it's more and more of an issue, and there's more and more hybrid cars on the road, quiet cars that don't make any sound. So when you're trying to cross an intersection using just your hearing, it's really scary. And very difficult to know when there's a vehicle there or not, or especially like we as sighted pedestrians can do, perceive a vehicle coming from a distance, and by sound, normally he can tell how quickly it's moving or how far away it is, but with the quiet cars, it just really makes it practically impossible for him to know when there's a vehicle there or not. Also, I guess one point I'd like to just make briefly is we won't know, hopefully we'll never know, how important it is to his safety, to whether the stop signs are there or not. If we don't put them there and he doesn't get hit, that'll be great. If we do put them there and he doesn't get hit, we don't know for sure that the stop signs are what prevented him from having, an accident there. But I fail to see anything that could be a harm to anyone else for having the extra security there for him. And I think in the legal world, sometimes they call it a belt and suspenders approach, that I have yet to hear from anybody what the harm could be for having the extra layer of security there for him. Except that it does interfere with drivers' expectations. If you have a certain standard, if every intersection in your town is exactly one way and every calming circle is exactly one way, then drivers begin to expect a certain thing and they know how to behave. That isn't the case. We have lots of oddball intersections in our town, but to address the issue of whether it's going to confuse drivers, we could do some other things there to make it clear that this is a different intersection, this is a different scenario. Signs that say yield to pedestrians, or I'm not sure what, but there's a lot of very low-tech solutions that I think could be put there. The city spent a lot of money installing the audible pedestrian signals, and they have been fabulous for him. But this is a really cheap and pretty low-tech solution, so that's what so if you have any questions.
Thank you both for speaking about this.
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions?
What's there now, what's proposed?
Right now, I think that intersection was a four-way stop.
Yes.
There's four intersections over there where we're installing traffic circles, 17th and 18th in Illinois and 17th and 18th in Indiana. A couple of them might have been four-way stops, some are two-way stops. But with the traffic calming project that we're doing here this summer to put in full traffic circles, the design recommendation is to not go back with stop signs because they don't meet warrants. But we had this question come up when we were going through the neighborhood meetings on different traffic calming options. So we've been aware of this. Our recommendation was to proceed with putting in the traffic circles per the plan with not having stop signs. But if after the project was complete, if we wanted to go back and look at putting stop signs at at an intersection, it could go back through this process to come to the Transportation Commission to review. Staff could put it on a future agenda, maybe as early as next month, and bring you back some data and a staff recommendation, and you could make an action item to change what we have planned to do for this intersection or any of the other ones.
On the permanent traffic calming circle, is it substantially different than what's there right now?
Well,
I'm looking at the Google, it's got the 6 parking stops and the yellow sign in the middle.
Yeah, what's there right now was put in as a very low-cost, temporary traffic circle option, which has been in there for a long time for a temporary device, 14 years, I think. But we are making it a lot larger. It'd be similar to the one at 8th and Michigan as far as the size goes. Maybe not as big as some of the ones on Harvard out west. But it's about as big as we can get in without impacting right-of-way. So it will be large enough that it will naturally slow cars down without going through it or over it. So that the circle there before did not necessarily do that. You could still maneuver around it at a higher speed if you didn't stop it with the stop sign. So we are designing it to be a low-speed intersection.
Charlie, I've got a couple of comments, if you want me to go ahead. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak? We probably want to go ahead and do that, or?
Are you asking questions, or are you wanting to make comments?
Probably a little bit more in the comment world.
Could you save it for the commission items? Would that work?
I'd rather not. I'd rather not.
But this isn't an agenda item yet, is it?
No, I think I'd like to keep it to questions with the public here. We have time on our agenda later tonight to have commission items, so if anyone feels so moved by anything from the public today, that's an appropriate time, I think, for us to have that discussion.
Okay.
Just direct staff right now to bring this back to us, right?
We could either now or during commission items. So,
There's a junior now?
Yeah, well, he's a senior now.
He's a senior.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be very effective for 1 year.
1 year, yeah.
is there anyone else has any questions, or?
I think they were cool with the people that
Okay.
maybe.
Did anybody have something else to ask about this?
I have a question. If we think this should be put before the city commission, is there any affirmative step that us members of the public can take?
So the question was if this should be put before the city commission, would there be anything the public can do to make that possible? Did I understand that correctly?
It sounded like you were saying that there was something you could do later today regarding the city commission's agenda. I just wasn't sure.
No, not the city commission agenda, sir. We are able to, on our agenda, there's a section at the end after the business of the meeting is done where we can discuss any items that any commissioner brings to that point of the agenda. So the public comment is really intended to let the public address us, and I just want an opportunity for anyone to ask clarifying questions. Otherwise, my preference would be that we save our discussion till after our business is done. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Well, I'll be happy to save my
Okay.
comments until later, if that works
Thanks, Steve.
within our,
Yeah, I think so.
the scheme of things.
Just so we can get through the public comments without
Okay.
further delay. Gary, would you like to go next?
Yes, go next. I'm Gary Weber, 907 Merle Court. I'm the facilitator of PEDCO, the Lawrence Pedestrian Coalition. I'm here to update you on an initiative that the PEDCO and a number of other community groups will be putting before the City Commission on June 13th and again on June 20th. As you know, among a number of other items related to pedestrian infrastructure and safety, PEDCO has been involved in sidewalk repair and the question of equitable funding for sidewalk repair. Currently, sidewalks repair is responsibility of the adjacent property owner, as is in most of the state of Kansas and actually in most of the United States. However, our sidewalks are in deplorable shape, and little has been done in the last 40 years to improve their quality, and PEDCO thinks something else should be done to make this a more equitable way to fund them rather than relying only on adjacent property owners. Therefore, we will be going before the commission on the 13th and the 20th to ask them to earmark a portion of the sales tax, street and infrastructure sales tax, which they will be considering for renewal this year and perhaps next year if it doesn't pass this year. As you know, that sales infrastructure and street sales tax is sunsetted next year, and the commission is planning to put it on the referendum, put it up for a referendum and vote in November to renew that infrastructure and street sales tax. 0.3% of that infrastructure and sales and street sales tax goes towards streets and infrastructure. And the Pedestrian Coalition and other groups would like to advocate that 1/6 of that amount, or 0.05%, be earmarked specifically for repair of sidewalks. This basically means the city will take over repair and maintenance of sidewalks and take it out of the hands of the adjacent property owners. This concept has come before the City Commission a number of times in the last 5 years and has never been successful. There was never funding. There was a question of liability for a trip and fall, a number of issues that prior commissions have not chosen to fund it in this way, but to leave it as the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. So, Pedestrian Coalition has visited with most, if not all, of the commissioners and gotten their input on this, and at least a couple seem to be, I don't know exactly how to say it. They support this concept, perhaps not to the point of allocating sales tax to it, but we will find out. So we are advocating 0.05% or 1/6 of the 0.3% streets and infrastructure sales tax to go toward sidewalk repair. And that would generate about $1 million. The current estimate for repair of sidewalks is approximately $9.5 million, about $6.4 million for sidewalks themselves, and about $3.1 million for additional city responsibility sidewalks and ADA ramps. So if the system is correct, at the end of the 10-year sales tax period, the sidewalks in Lawrence would be repaired and all sidewalks, existing sidewalks, would be in good shape. I must make it clear that this proposal that we'll be putting before the commission does not deal with new sidewalks. It does not deal with infill or gap filling where sidewalks are missing, and as you know, there are many, many of those in this town. It only deals with the repair of existing sidewalks. We'll be going before the commission in their general comment period at the beginning of the June 13th meeting, and we'll present a written proposal to the City Commission prior to that meeting, and then on June 20th they will be considering the sales tax referendum and what will go on it, and we again will make our presentation at that time as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gary. Is there any questions for Mr. Weber?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Please introduce yourself.
My name is Tim Phillips. I live on Mississippi Street. I'm a neighbor to Brindy. I've been in the neighborhood for approximately 17 years. I was part of the original coalition, neighborhood coalition that pushed to have traffic calming circles brought into our neighborhood, and I think they will be a fantastic addition. You know, I'm thrilled. I'm a proponent. I think there have possibly been some consequences to the path we've gotten, that we've taken to get here. As somebody mentioned, the temporary structure's been in place for about 14 years. Even to us, 14 years is a long time, but think of somebody Luther's age, 17, and everything that's happened in that amount of time. As a hybrid car driver, I've seen sighted people jump out of their skin when I've come up behind them because they didn't know that I was there. Think of all the people who are looking at their phones when they're driving now that weren't, you know, when we started down this course 14 years ago. A lot of things have changed, but one thing that has not changed during this period when Luther has learned to navigate our neighborhood is he's had 4 stop signs at this intersection, even during the temporary calming circle. We've had some really good conversations with city engineers and people about possible solutions to this issue. I would like to point out that I think this is a very particular issue. It's not something that, it's an unusual issue. The engineers tell us that it's not code. They just don't want to, break outside of the fact that calming circles should not have stop signs. And, in the long run, I buy that. I think the calming circles are going to do great good, save a lot of people, a lot of injury, a lot of traffic accidents over time. But in this particular case, I can see how it will make things more difficult for Luther to get to school. And I think, personally, I'd rather see another audible signal go up so that he can navigate this intersection. If that's not within the budget of the city, then I think we need to look at other solutions. And the engineers have been great and they're doing great work, but sometimes, they're restricted to thinking inside that box. And I would like to encourage the city to maybe think outside the box if necessary. If that means something simple like turning a stop sign green or orange or yellow, whatever. But I don't see any reason why in this special situation here, we can't make some sort of safety difference. And if we need to put up a sign that says, hey, other calming circles are not going to have stop signs in the future, this is a special case, then let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here tonight and for addressing the Transportation Commission. The next item on our agenda is a project presentation, Queens Road, 6th Street to Eisenhower Drive.
Yeah, I'll be real brief before I turn it over to Jason Hoskinson with BG to go over kind of the design concept. But this is a project that we started designing back in July of 2016. Queens Road's an old county road. It's within the city limits, so it's in need of some improvement. So Jason's going to kind of walk through some of the design elements of the project. And then as a side note, I would mention that I think tomorrow night at the City Commission meeting, they'll be discussing the formation of the benefit district, which is going to, the proposal to fund the improvements. So that's a side note, but this item's more to look at kind of the design details for where we are currently at. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Jason to go over it.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Yeah, Jason Hoskinson. I'm an engineer with BG Consultants here in town. And I'm going to be pretty brief with this. I'm going to just hit some high points, give you some information and background of the scope of this project and what's included in the Queens Road Benefit District project. As you can see on this slide here, this is just kind of an aerial graphic. North is to the right, if you notice down there. So we've got 6th Street on the left side of the screen. The highlight area is roughly 3/4 of a mile. That is, generally speaking, the extent of the project. It's a benefit district project. It's going to include complete reconstruction of the pavement. I don't know if you've driven out there. In some areas, it doesn't have pavement. It's definitely a much-needed project on the list here, scheduled for a 2018 construction. The next sheet I've got here, the typical street cross-section. This will kind of give you a feel for what we're planning to improve on the corridor. Right now it's a collector street, or classified to be a collector street. So we're looking at a collector type of cross section. It'll be a 2-lane/3-lane configuration. We'll have one northbound driving lane. This would be a snapshot looking, say, in the northbound direction. So one driving lane northbound, one driving lane southbound. Where we do have some access and a need for left turn lanes, we'll have the center median portion paved for a 2-way left turn lane. There are a significant number of areas or segments of the project that don't require a left turn lane. So in those areas, we're going to do a raised median with street tree plantings. We try to break up that hardscape and provide a more aesthetically appealing drive. You'll also notice on both sides of the driving lanes, we are the current Current concept for the design includes on-street bike lanes. And then on the left side, the west side of the road, we've got a 10-foot concrete shared use path that'll connect in with a lot of the other paths that are around that area. And of course, a concrete sidewalk on it would be the east side of Queens Road. This is kind of a snapshot of the proposed design on top of the aerial in the background. Certainly don't intend for you to be able to see this or read it or look in details. But if you do have questions about the project, I've got a high resolution. We can zoom in, kind of show you certain areas if you do have questions. Again, 6th Street on the left, the beginning of the project, going on through Overland Drive, continuing on to the north. The Links development is currently underway on the west side there, and then ending at Eisenhower Drive, which is kind of that main entrance into it'd be the Westwood Hills development. It's essentially the north city limits of the city of Lawrence as we currently have it. I'm going to zoom in on a few of the key intersections along the project and what we're planning on doing as far as those improvements go. At the south end, we've got the 6th and Queens intersection. This is going to be a new signalized intersection. It was planned for a signalized control at some point in the future, back when it was constructed in 2004, I think is when 6th Street was rebuilt. So we'll have a new signal here. Branchwood Drive to the south is being extended and constructed as part of the development for the senior housing on the southwest corner. You can see Queens Road, a 3-lane segment here with bike lanes. Kind of sticking with this complete streets theme on our design, we're actually going to reduce the radius, the size of the radii on each corner to reduce crosswalk lengths and try to enhance safety for pedestrians. If we continue on north as we go up and kind of over the hill there on Queens Road, about a quarter mile down, you'll hit a roundabout. We've got a single-lane roundabout proposed at Queens and Overland Drive. Continuing on about a half a mile, roughly, not quite. This will be a roundabout at Wakarusa Drive and Queens Road. Again, north is to the right on the page. The top of this image would be the Links apartment development complex that's underway. And the last slide I just want to touch on here real quick regarding the project is traffic control. This is slated for a 2018 construction project. So we are wrapping up design. The plan is to work through the right-of-way and utility relocations through the remainder of the year. Bid this out late this year for a 2018 construction project. The majority of the construction is going to take place in phase 1, which would basically include reconstruction from 6th Street all the way up to Wakarusa Drive. That allows us to keep access from the county folks that live to the north. They would have access to come down and continue on Wakarusa Drive to get to 6th Street. A majority of the developments here on the west side, you can see in this aerial, the Links development, the West End apartments, Kellen Addition. A lot of the development that's happening over here has access out to Stone Ridge Drive, George Williams Drive, other ways out. Similarly, all the houses on the east side have good ways out to the east. So it gives us an opportunity to close it down to traffic, rebuild it, and put it up to current standards. So, and then the phase 2, that would be that last portion there where we will need to look at finishing out the road to Eisenhower Road and the tie-in back to the county road going on to the north. So that in a nutshell, I think are the highlights of the project. Again, it's slated for a 2018 construction. And I guess with that, I turn it over to the commission for any questions that you may have.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm interested in the budgeting process, mainly just for our education here as much as anything, but it's a $4.5 million item now, is that correct?
I might let city staff address this.
Right now, the current estimate is 4.8. There's about
4.8.
$350,000 that the city is going to pay for because of the additional street width and the additional width for the multi-use path. So the benefit district is going to be assessed 4.5, and that's just a proposal at this point.
Okay. Well, I'll sound like an engineer or an architect here for a second. I'm curious, are these budgets like based on unit cost or, past projects initially? And that's
they're
what goes into
estimated,
your
and,
budget?
there's a lot of unknowns at this point.
Right.
The numbers are put together. We want to be conservative. We only get one shot. Once the maximum assessments are established, we can't go back. So
Right.
we want to make
Right.
sure we're safe. So there is contingency built in there, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Have you updated the budget since your conceptual estimate, like during DD or subsequent phases? You're in the final working drawing stage now?
Yeah, I mean, still
Yeah.
working on 'em.
Yeah, I was going to say, we track unit prices and construction market patterns and whatnot. We typically look at the last 3 to 5 years of bid average for unit prices of work, and then use that, to give us a basis of where we believe this project may run. And we've been working with city staff to develop those estimates through the design process. So we've tried to refine them, but again, like Chuck said, there are some unknowns that you won't know until you get into construction or until you bid the project out.
And the number that, the 4.5 or 4.8, that includes engineering, right-of-way, inspection, bonding costs, issuance, legal fees, administration. There's 20+% probably in non-construction related activities.
Yeah. So I think this is my last question, Chuck. When you go out to bid, you're still carrying a contingency?
When we go out to bid, the contract will be awarded based on the bid.
Yeah.
The budget will still be there. So if we have, and this will happen, we'll overrun concrete pavement or sidewalk, and we'll overrun it by whatever, $10,000 or whatever, and we have the budget to pay for it. And the benefit district only gets charged what the actual final costs are. So if it comes in at, let's not go too far, 4 million, then everybody's estimated assessments will decrease.
Okay.
Who is the benefit district in this?
The benefit district is pretty much the developments on both the east and west sides from 6th Street to Eisenhower. And then there's a portion on the south side at the intersection, so we have 2 benefit districts going on. Because the signal also will take into effect the benefit that people south of 6th Street will receive. So there's a benefit district for the signalization and then a benefit district for the road to the north.
Are there any other questions? I have just a couple. The first, do we know the speed limit, what it'll be on that road?
I think we're designing at 35. Is that right?
Yeah, we're designing it for 40 mile an hour design speed with the intent of a posted 35 mile an hour speed limit. There's a couple of vertical curves and some geometry and things of that nature that I think we've hit the 30 to 35 mile mark because of how the roundabout's slowing traffic down, and that's some of our pinch points. And with both roundabouts being relatively close to each other, they're kind of a quasi traffic calming device in and of itself that help keep those speeds, prevent the speeds from somebody getting off of 6th Street and heading north and getting up to 55 miles an hour.
Is that standard to design it for 40 but post it at 35? Okay.
Yeah, typical design standards are designed 5 miles an hour over the anticipated posted speed.
Okay. And then, can you clarify, this would be for staff, the $350,000 for the city portion of it, is that in the
by our
proposed
development
budget?
by our development policy, it's many, many years old, and we haven't needed it for a while. But typically, we would put into the cost for the benefit district would be a standard street, which would be 12-foot wide lanes, bike lanes. At the time the policy was developed, we weren't doing bike lanes. So that's an additional width to the pavement. So when you figure, and basically that's just adding width to the pavement. So even though it's only for bikes, it's still, well, if it's concrete, it's still 8 or 10 inches thick concrete or 8 or 10 inches of asphalt. So it's an addition of 20 feet, well, no, 10 feet of pavement width, which when you figure that out, that's 25% of that street width. So, and that includes the subgrade. So it's basically 25% of the pavement and subgrade. And then on the sidewalks, we only ask that adjacent properties as they develop put in what would be required for that street, you know, a 6-foot sidewalk or 5-foot sidewalk. In this case, we're putting in a 10-foot sidewalk, so the city will pick up that additional width. So that's $350,000.
And so the $350,000, does that come out of the proposed funding for pedestrian and bicycle and ADA improvements?
That's our next item.
Okay. Is the bike lane width, I saw in the design, it was 4 feet? Did I get that
Yes.
right? Is that the city's standard for bike lane width?
I thought we were 5.
Yeah, the minimum's 5 feet, but that's to the face of the curb. So I think with the way it's shown, it's 5.5 feet to the face of the curb, so it meets the minimum width for a bike lane.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Hoskinson.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask if the public has any questions of you.
They're all coming tomorrow.
Carol?
My question's really quick. Where do pedestrians cross the streets?
Do you mind answering that question? Where do pedestrians
Yeah.
cross?
Yeah, let me pull that graphic back up. I was just closing out. Hello, there we go. Okay. The primary crossing points will be obviously at the 6th and Queens intersection at the left. That'll be a signal controlled crossing, so there'll be the walk signal with the don't walk and the countdown timer, crosswalks boxing that entire intersection in. Sidewalk connections will continue all the way up to the roundabout, quarter mile to the roundabout at Overland Drive. There will be crosswalks, marked crosswalks on all 4 quadrants, or all 4 approaches really, to that roundabout. There is going to be an opportunity for pedestrian crossings at Fort Benton Drive. This is into the Kellen Addition residential neighborhood at this location. The shared use path is on that side. I would imagine if people are living there and wanting to come out, they're probably going to gravitate towards using that 10-foot shared use path for bicyclists and whatnot. So there's an opportunity though for them to cross there. There's kind of a match line. If I jump from this point all the way down to here and continue north, there'll be another opportunity for pedestrians to cross at the roundabout. I might mention the reason that's kind of shaded back, that is actually being designed by the Lynx development, and it's going to be under construction this year, as I understand it. There'll be 4 crossings again, each approach for pedestrian crossings here. And then we end at Eisenhower Drive, and that has, there'll be a crossing of the intersection apron, and then it'll have sidewalk connections going into the development to the east there.
So a total of 4 uncontrolled crossings. Is that 2 with roundabouts?
2, you're talking about crossing of Queens?
Yes.
Yeah, 2 at the roundabout, 1 at Fort Benton Drive, and then a controlled crossing at 6th Street. Yeah.
Okay.
Jason, on the west side of Queens, north of Wakarusa, sidewalk doesn't extend. Does the sidewalk extend all the way to the end of the project, or does it end at the city limits line?
Yeah, the north city limits ends at the north property line of Links Development, so it kind of jogs, and I think it's down the city limits is actually down the section line, I believe, through there. So it's right down the center of the road. But rather than build half of a road on the east side and then leave the west side just a 10-foot chip sealed road that looks like it's in the Gravel County standards, we are going to go ahead and widen the road. There is enough right-of-way to take that curb line more or less to the right-of-way. But the right-of-way does not, well, this is county property at this point. It's out in the county, excuse me. So the thought would be, if and when this is annexed into the future, annexed into the city in the future, that shared use path could be extended on at that point.
But there's no connection like down to from here down, I'm gonna say north to the Baldwin Creek Trail project or anything like that.
That'd be a county
No.
project.
Right, I mean, I'm just asking the question. I mean, you'd have to go.
That's the idea.
Ultimately, but you'd right now have to go west
Yeah.
on Wakarusa, get over to Rock Chalk, and then go
Yeah.
back over around.
If money were no object, we could include it in here, right?
I like how you're thinking. Making that connection would be really nice. Commissioner Severin's not here, but he had asked me or mentioned to me once about the gap in the sidewalk that is at Overland Drive. And does this resolve that gap?
Yeah, I
When you're-
think it just, right now, it dead ends because the road hasn't been approved, but the roundabout will tie into the existing sidewalk on the east
Okay.
and west side.
All right,
That's correct.
thanks. That just kind of occurred to me there. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chuck, are you going to be doing this one?
Yes, I don't have a formal presentation, but
Okay.
I've had to go over the memo that we. Where's the little button? Look at this. Kind of go over the memo that I prepared that was submitted to the City Commission. So in the 2017 budget, and I believe the recommendation carries on for the 2018 budget, but right now we're working on what to do with the 2017 funding. There's $450,000 for bicycle and pedestrian programming projects, improvements. And the question's been raised, you know, what projects are we going to do? So in the memo, I kind of outlined several options for the commission, just giving the options. We wanted to kind of run those by you to see if you guys had any recommendations you wanted to send on to the commission. They haven't made that decision yet. It was pretty casual. It wasn't a formal, you know, you need to make a decision because we got to get this money programmed. So, but anyway, back when we had the pedestrian bicycle task force, and I've attached, does everybody have a copy, or are you familiar with this? Because I can put up the things, I can put these up here on the elbow. Oh, okay.
I think it's
See that?
on our study session
Scroll all the way down.
for this week,
It's the last two items.
right? Dave? Yeah.
Oh, it's way down. Oop. All right, so, back to the pedestrian and bicycle task force, put together some scenarios if, and some recommendations if the commission budgeted a certain dollar amount per year. They had a $500,000 for pedestrian funding. You can see here they had safe routes to schools, installing missing sidewalk on safe route to school routes. They had estimated $230,000. Maintenance on safe walk to school routes, $150,000. ADA compliance on safe walk to school route, $700,000. Gap project on Princeton or Castle, and they've done this out for a few years. Then they also had a second illustration in case the commission didn't fund $500,000 a year. And again, they had a recommendation of installing missing sidewalks on safe routes to school routes, $230,000. And you can see what they've recommended for 17 to come up with a recommendation of $250,000. Similarly, for the bicycle network funding illustrations, they had some recommendations that they came up with. 21st Street Boulevard between Iowa and Mass for 17. Again, this was a $500,000 a year commitment. And they did a $250,000 commitment, which would have been the Lawrence Loop, Woody Park Trail segment, and pavement markings and signage. So the pedestrian advisory task force, pedestrian bicycle advisory task force, came up with those recommendations. As we just talked about, Queens Road is 100% benefit district funded, except for that development policy, which has not been funded through the city's budget process, $350,000 for the additional pavement width for bike lanes and the additional width for the multi-use path. That's another option. Another option that we've identified is the city has approximately 7,500 ADA accessible ramps. We know that a little more than half are non-compliant or non-existent. In order to start repairing those, the $450,000 that's budgeted would start. I mean, it's about a $3.2 million estimate. $450,000, a big chunk of money. I mean, we could put it all towards that. And we've also identified we've got about 4,100 linear feet of sidewalk adjacent to storm sewers that have settled or otherwise they need to be repaired, and we would be responsible for those. So what I propose to the city commission, at least to give people start thinking about that, the city has some needs on existing infrastructure. And while we realize that there's a lot of good projects out there, before we build new projects, before we build new buildings, new facilities, new infrastructure, should we not think about investing in maintaining our current infrastructure? Because those needs are there and they're not going away. We can build more, but that's just more to maintain, and we're not maintaining what we currently have. Just something to give people some things to think about and to discuss. I mean, great projects, and we'll do them when we can, and do them as funding becomes available. But we've got existing needs with handicap ramps. We've got existing needs in sidewalks next to storm sewers, and we could focus, just trying to, maybe get some bang for your buck. We can focus on those areas, on those safe routes to schools routes, because some of that, install missing sidewalks and ADA compliant ramps, those are in those safe routes to school areas. So, you kind of get a dual bang for your buck or something like that. So, we could do that and address a city's existing need and take care of some of, what the community is also wanting. Now, I think the Sustainability Action Network has submitted a letter opposing this because the money was budgeted with the intent that they would be standalone projects. So, build new, but then, you've still got to ask the question, what do you do about the existing? So, that's really all I had, unless you've got questions. And so tonight, really, the discussion is, do you guys have any recommendations that you would like to forward to the city commission? Because, we've got all these different ideas. If you like some, great. If you are opposed to some, that's fine too. I mean, we just want the city commission to know what's out there, and obviously a representation of the community.
Can you clarify what our timeline is for providing a recommendation?
Well, we're into the 2017 year. We are short staff-wise. We would typically do some of this stuff in-house. We may have to do it, contract it. If we contract it, obviously, the bang for your buck goes down because you don't get as much concrete if you have to pay for design. But, you know, sooner rather than later, because people are asking, and they're asking the commission, what are you going to do with that money? And we can't say we're still discussing it, but, and, you know, we just need to start having a plan. Now, it doesn't need to be tonight, not necessarily.
I guess I'm curious if our next meeting, which I think we've scheduled for July 10, if that's too late, or do you need to know?
Well, if we knew a recommendation would be forthcoming, I don't know that would be an issue. Like I said, the money's in the 17 budget. It's not going away. But obviously, you know, as things progress, you know, and the budgets are tough. I mean, I can't say that tomorrow night the commission won't think about their obligations on Queens Road. And we don't have any identification for that money. We have not started a project yet.
And are you suggesting the 2017 funding for the Queens Road project, or 2018?
It will be 2017.
Okay. So that
because we don't have a
decision-
2018 approved budget yet.
Okay. So then tomorrow night, they could decide to essentially put the 2017 ped bike funding
Yeah,
toward the
I don't know that they'll
2018
do it tomorrow
budget.
night, but it is in the staff memo.
Okay.
Yes, we have a consensus among ourselves
Mhm.
about that. We could provide that to the judge.
Sure.
The commission tomorrow night. Rather than making a decision, let's make a
Mhm.
decision in July and not change anything.
Yeah, one question I do have, is there ped bike substantial maintenance line item anywhere?
Say that again?
Is there pedestrian bicycle facility substantial maintenance item somewhere? And we're talking about the $450,000 is for improvement right now, correct?
Well, there's $450,000 in the budget, and that's the question.
Yeah, but, okay, but it was
That's the question.
dedicated, but there's no other place there where you're trying to pay for some substantial maintenance?
No.
Okay.
We don't have any pedestrian bicycle maintenance funds
Okay.
budgeted.
Chuck, I've got a technical question on the ADA curb cuts, the
Mhm.
curb ramps. Assuming that you're replacing the old ones because they're now non-compliant, my question would be, when were they installed? Did they meet ADA standards when they were constructed, and what year was that?
You know, I don't have all that information right
Okay.
now, but throughout the years, as, you know, when we install them to what's current code,
Mhm.
or we at least try. I'm not going to say that some of them just got installed just to, so there was,
Mhm.
something's better than nothing.
Mhm. Well, I know that's history, and I'm honestly not too concerned about that, because you're
Right.
obviously trying to do the right thing now. I'm wondering, though, do you basically take the old ones out, totally deconstruct
It
them?
depends on that compliance issue.
Okay,
You know, there's 53% that wouldn't meet today's standard.
okay,
And obviously, we're gonna start with, if it's, you know, if it's supposed to be, what is it, a 1/4 inch per foot, if it's a little bit off, but
Mhm.
another one's, you know, really bad, we're gonna probably, because we're not gonna get $3.2 million right off the bat to do every one.
Mhm.
So we're gonna start with the worst, and we're gonna make improvements as we go. And
Seems to me like the transition between the ramp and the curb is somewhat abrupt on some of them. And
there's a lot in the older part here, especially with the hill and stuff. You know, it's not just the sidewalk. In order to get to, or not the ramp, in order to get to the sidewalk, we may have to bring whole half a blocks down and build
Yeah.
retaining walls just to get these.
I guess if I were really going to drill into that one item, and it's a big line item, I'd probably like to see, you know, exactly what's wrong with what we have now, trusting, I'm sure,
Sure.
the standards. You guys wouldn't be, you know, making this up, I'm sure, so I'm sure it's needed, but just to benefit, you know, a little more technical understanding about a number that big would be great.
53% or more than half, I mean, is that including the ones now that are out of compliance because now the bricks aren't acceptable anymore? They have to be the.
I think this is more slope and cross slope and vertical
So, I
slope.
mean, it's real. if
It's
you wanna
not the
talk
delineators or the truncated domes. Or,
Right. I
yeah,
mean,
it's not those.
So the number is actually a lot higher if you go by letter of the law.
Yeah, but I don't know, you know, if we recently replaced them and they met
Right.
code, I don't know that we would be held to a higher standard if it wasn't deficient.
I'm just making sure that this 53% is including that because I think that
Right.
would be crazy.
Yeah, no.
To go back and.
We don't want to spend crazy money.
Yeah.
There's not enough of it.
Right. Just because yesterday bricks were okay and today they're not.
You know, a majority of these that we would start with, you know, at $450,000 just isn't a lot of money. We would start with the ones that absolutely, you know, were broke, you know, there's some that are really narrow, there's some are just the curbs are knocked off and we just put some sidewalk behind it. I mean, we've got some really bad ones. And I'm sure we could use that much money just to fix the worst ones.
I mean, from the standpoint of what I'm hearing for tonight, and I mean, I understand the timing and all this, and hey, we just got this and all that, but
Sure.
my input is the biggest bang for our buck, which to me is the safe routes to school, where we're talking a segment of the population that needs that kind of extra help getting from point A to point B. I mean, I don't know how we shuffle things around in the budget and all that other stuff, but I think the safe routes to school needs to be a big component of whatever's done.
Do we get a federal match on that?
We do have a match on this year for safe route to school routes.
Yeah, we're doing, I can't remember the number, 90-some sidewalk ramps with this year's safe routes to school and some rapid flashing beacons.
Now, does that require those some local obligation too, to get that money?
What's
Do
that?
we have to match that to get
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, how
Yeah.
much a match? Was it
I
90,
can't remember
10?
the number, yeah.
It was pretty good, it was pretty,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty good grant. It was like 90-10, yeah.
But that's money you need to spend to get the other money.
Right. Right.
So with the safe routes, how much is, given that there is a grant, how much additional funding is needed to install or replace the non-compliant ADA ramps?
Well, the Safe Routes grant that's being designed right now, the city's match, I think, was funded out of the 2016 dollars. So, and then we'll be talking here at our study session about the application for next year's TA, which includes Safe Routes. So there could be next year some dollars that need to be matched out of next year's bike ped money for safe routes to school, but there's none out of the 2017 that we need to match to safe routes or to any other trail project.
Sure, for the grant, but are there additional ADA ramps that are non-existent along those routes? Or are you suggesting we would not consider doing that, but rather maybe apply for another safe routes grant and then use that to match the?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I think these dollars would be spent to the maintenance of sidewalk ramps, and we could go back and see if there are any other sidewalk ramps in the safe routes to school that are out of ADA compliance. That would probably be the first question we need to answer. I know we're doing a lot of them here with this year's project, but yeah, so that's. You know, in our funding commitment, that was in 2017, that was one of the priorities, install missing sidewalk on safe routes to school and sidewalk maintenance on safe routes to school and ADA compliant curb ramps on safe routes, I guess, for 18. But we can certainly prioritize those. That's the feedback we need. We did originally, you know, when we were putting together the city staff or the city staff recommended sidewalk maintenance program when we took it to the city commission. I think in March, we inspected 1/8 of the city's sidewalks and identified all of the ramps within that area that we were going to take responsibility for. So we do have some that we already know we're responsible for. So there's probably some discussion we need to have internally on how obligated we are to fix some of the ones where we just went out and marked them again and we're ready to kind of assess ourselves or fix them ourselves with this year's budget. And that was the original plan, if we were to proceed with that sidewalk maintenance program this year, to fund the improvements for ramps and storm sewer inlets. The city infrastructure adjacent to sidewalks was out of this money, and that was about $250,000 for that 1/8 of the city that we inspected here this spring. So there's several different options.
Like the data that you already have on non-compliant or non-existent ramps was from 2014. Does the inspection that was just done have some greater weight to it than that audit that was done a few years ago? In terms of how it might legally kind of motivate you to fix it? I mean, is there something different about this most recent inspection?
No, I think we did this last inspection a little more in detail. The first one was kind of a global, just to get an idea. And so we went out and hired some temporary help and went through all of the sidewalks within a couple of months. So I think this was maybe a little more thorough. We know that there's some that are uncompliant, that are outside of that, what we just inspected here this spring all over the city. So, I don't know if it's probably the nitty-gritty details, but we just need to, at some point, prioritize what we're going to do with these dollars. So I think the safe routes is a good option to start with, to find however many ramps don't meet ADA on those existing routes, and then find other high priority areas. But we just wanted to put this topic out because we've went with our sidewalk maintenance inspection information that we just provided, and then the Queens Road project, and then all of the other outline of projects that the Bike Ped Task Force identified. We have obviously way more projects and cost than budgeted, so we'll need to prioritize those funds.
And so what would you like from us tonight?
Really, it's more of a general discussion, and if this board wanted to make some kind of, recommendation to the commission, to either follow the pedestrian bicycle task force recommendations, or, if the recommendation was to split it somehow, or work on the ADA ramps or existing infrastructure that the city already has. We're not looking for, you don't have to pick the ADA ramps, you don't have to pick the specific sidewalks, but, if you guys had a recommendation or a consensus, the Transportation Commission feels that, the city has some existing, and then I'm speaking here, just some existing obligations with current infrastructure, and you feel that, or, if you feel that there's been some, I don't want to say promises, but basically some understanding that money would be used to build new, then, and follow the pedestrian bicycle task force recommendation, which is fine too. Or if you've got a different idea, that'd be great.
Well, it just so happens.
These are the ones that I came up with.
It just so happens on the page 34 that included in our packet, for the funding illustration for the Safe Routes to School item, that adds up to $450,000, suggesting that there's $230,000 of missing sidewalk 150,000 of maintenance needed, and then 70,000 of ADA curb ramps. That data didn't consider the Safe Routes grant? Correct?
I don't think
so.
I don't think so, yeah.
So
But
I guess I'd be curious if the Safe Routes grant is also added in, is this, I guess what's left to do? And if the curb ramps are missing entirely, then that would seem to be a bigger deal than replacing a curb ramp that happens not to fall within the current, most recent ADA requirements. I'm understanding, Steve, your point about old ADA ramps versus new. Was that your sentiment? You were asking about what was the time of the curb ramp installation and all that. So if I'm understanding your sentiment correctly, you would rather not, if there's a missing curb ramp, like nothing there, you might rather add a curb ramp than replace an
Well,
non-compliant
honestly, I
curb ramp.
hadn't thought that far
Okay.
ahead, but my question, I think, for a lot of the budgeting stuff really in general is asking a lot of questions to get to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think, in a way, some of this is a little premature. I'll speak for myself in, being able to make kind of a big picture sweeping recommendation on any budget, anything that's going on in the budget now, particularly in the context of what the city commission is going to do or not. My question about the ramps was just simply, what do they look like now? And
Okay.
could you go over there, could you go chip off a curb and not redo the whole thing? But like I said, I trust that you all have, considered whether that's a realistic solution or not. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
So I've heard support for prioritizing safe routes. Was there any other
Well, one item.
area you'd like to?
Is it of any use to provide a recommendation to the commission to not raid this fund for the Queen Street improvements?
Yeah, I've been waiting for the discussion to end, or if you want to take it there right now, that would be great.
Is that something that's helpful for staff?
It's good information for the city commission to
To
consider.
know that, yeah, we're not for solving, we can solve this budget problem, we'll just put it on Queen Street.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be a good motion to go to.
I know a lot of this, this is what, your fourth, fifth meeting? I know you're getting caught cold and you're not, a lot of you don't know all the backside stories to all this stuff, but hopefully by next year, you'll have caught up and gotten into the swing of things, for next year budgetary season. We're just trying to throw this stuff at you guys so you know all that's going to be coming in the future, really, but we appreciate you guys' consideration of all these ideas.
I think it is important to look at whether we have $450,000 or $100,000. So I think that's where we're starting, in my opinion.
So maybe the most immediate question is, do we want to make a recommendation not to use 2017 Fed bike funds for the Queens Road project?
I would motion.
Okay. I think I have a motion from Commissioner Hurt and a second from Commissioner Payden to recommend to the City Commission that the 2017 Ped Bike funding not be used to support the Queens Road, city's portion of the Queens Road project. Is there any other discussion about this?
Of course, the question that I'll ask the commission then is, what project don't they want to fund so that we can build Queens Road?
It's a 2018 project, right?
It's not you. It's not your.
Right.
It's not your. The question you have to answer. But this is good to have this recommendation. But those are the things they will struggle with.
But what I'd be concerned about is then you just start, when you have bike ped issue come up, then you just go and you raid the fund that you use for basically for substantial maintenance.
Well, you said the city policy right now is that the benefit district would not be charged for that.
Right.
Do you know what the incremental cost would be on a property owner out there? If that 350,000 was part of the benefit district?
It's 12% of the total construction cost, the sidewalk and the bike. So the $350,000 construction only is 12%. So if the bill was a $2,000 or $3,000 bill, it'd be, what would that be? $2,000, 10% would be another $200.
Over the course of?
10 years.
10 years. So maybe under $2 a month for them to.
To a property owner, it's any dollar. I mean.
Right, so if you're gonna pay 200 versus 220, is that?
Yeah, it doesn't, they don't see the need to pay any of it, so. But that's not your discussion. I mean, that's gonna be the city commission's discussion.
Well, I mean, I think our role is to advise the city commission.
Sure.
So if the current policy needs to be reviewed, then I think that seems not inappropriate for us to suggest that the city commission maybe ask us to review that or review it some other way.
I mean, there's not the money in the PED bicycle budget to do both development projects and catch up on stuff and fill in gaps. Something has to give there.
Right.
Either the budget has to get bigger or that money has to come from somewhere else. To me, the Queens Road, it doesn't make sense to raid this money that's there. It's not enough already. I think that's what I'm hearing as a recommendation of this commission. In discussion wise.
Any other discussion about the motion? Right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Were there any abstentions? Right. Motion passes. Is there any other discussion you'd like to have on the ped bike funding?
I'd like to go back to the safe routes. I'd like to see us recommend that at least prioritize safe routes. It's basically one of our number one priorities, especially the install the missing sidewalk part.
Yeah, it fills in,
I mean, that's roughly half of the money we have, but if you could get, that would be a good start.
See, that's what I was asking, is that the Safe Routes grant that you received, doesn't that cover the missing sidewalk? I don't think this.
I don't know if it covers all of it. I
Okay.
mean, we're doing a portion. I think we're doing a lot of sidewalk ramps with it this
Okay.
year. So I don't know how much missing will remain after our project, but
But Dave, isn't it a dollar for dollar match?
no, not the.
It's a grant?
Yeah, I think it's 90-10, I think is what it was. So I think we got 150,000 and put up 10%. I'd have to double check the numbers. It wasn't a substantial amount of money, but I think it was $200,000 was the max, and we put up 20,000.
But the crossings cost quite a bit. We got
Yeah, we're
several, like $100,000.
Yeah, we're doing,
Those.
Nick Voss would probably know, he's not here tonight, but we're doing 5 to 10 crossings with the rapid flashing beacons. Those are a little cheaper than the pedestrian hybrid beacons, where we got the big mast arms. I think those are around $10,000 a crossing. So we're doing maybe 100,000 in those, and then about 100 sidewalk ramps at about $1,000 each. So that's probably the other 100,000. So roughly speaking, that's where the money's being spent from the 2016 dollars into the 2017 project.
So those beacons are now acceptable?
No.
We're reviewing that with KDOT.
Okay.
So yeah, the design, to get into the design details, we're reviewing the use of the funds for the beacons, which are not technically approved by the MUTCD. They were in an interim standpoint, but there's some legal, I guess, patent criteria before it gets officially adopted. So we're.
But it's still on the table, is what you're saying?
As far as
possible.
Yes, as
Okay.
far as we know today.
So perhaps one question would be, is there any other priority competing with safe routes in your mind? Or is that kind of generally our highest priority? Is there anything else that
I would
should
like
also be
to-
prioritized?
To see in addition to that, the gap sidewalks. I mean, there's several sections that have no sidewalks that are listed here. And that can fall closely behind the safe routes, but I think that's important too, because, you know, I see people walking up McDonald all the time just on the grass there. So however those are prioritized, I think it's important to get those filled in too.
The last couple of pages there show the funding illustrations for bicycle funding. Is there anything on that list or other bicycle projects that people are aware of that would also be a priority?
Well, the 21st Street Bicycle Boulevard between Iowa and Mass Street. I don't remember exactly what was talked about with that, but I thought it was very important. I mean, from a perspective of kids getting to Lawrence High and being able to get there, not driving from that side of town. Something I thought was pretty important. Bicycle boulevards, sort of looking at different types of infrastructure than we currently use, which I think was one of in the bicycle-friendly communities report. One of the things they pointed out that would be good to look at more is new infrastructure types. So I thought that was kind of a good priority. I don't know about for 2017 necessarily, but
Anything else? I haven't heard anybody mention the Lawrence Loop yet.
It would be nice
I'm
to
just
believe
kind of
that.
curious. Is that?
So there's only 450,000.
Yeah.
I was going to talk a little bit about that. It's just the two gaps that are currently being studied. But my thought is, if we see what commission does tomorrow night, then maybe we put a final tally on what we want to see in July based on the amount of money we think we have.
Mhm.
And that would help staff understand kind of the priorities. I think we gave them good direction so far tonight.
I think the direction's been really helpful, so I kind of agree with Commissioner Hamby. That if you would like, at least we know where you stand on Queens Road, so if that question comes up, and if you would like, maybe next month, with basically the input that we've had, and we can maybe look at what the Safe Routes to School grant, how much of that gap, or how much of that $230,000 would already be completed, and we can come back to you with maybe some recommendations, or maybe a couple different funding scenarios where it says, here's Safe Routes to Schools money, and maybe that uses it all, or maybe not. We can take a look.
Our study session Thursday is on the loop and on ped bike issues.
Don't know if David will have enough time to put all that together for that.
He's committed to it.
So are you thinking there's time by July to craft a little more detail around what would it look like if the 450,000 was put towards Safe Routes to School. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what you guys are
I'll look
asking
to David
for?
to see if he thinks he's got enough time, because he don't have much.
Yeah, we can find out kind of where we're at with our high priority safe routes from our survey that we did when we put this together versus what we're doing here with this project with the ramps, and bring back something by July on the safe routes. I think the Queens Road decision, if we get some direction on that tomorrow night, will have a big impact on what our final recommendation is. But I'd say July or August, we'll bring something back at August at the latest, but as soon as possible. We've got a lot of items on the future agenda for July already, so
All right.
we don't want to keep falling behind, but we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
All right. Oh, thanks, Chuck. So the next thing on our agenda is commission items. Is there any commissioner who would like to bring up an item?
I would start by saying that we're doing a Lawrence Loop alignment study for
Okay.
2 missing sections. We're having an open house on next Monday night at the library from 5:30 to 7:30. And I hope all of you can make it. If not, let me know and I'll get you some information ahead of time. But we're trying to figure out the routes to use to fill in those gaps. And then that can be used to apply for transportation alternatives funding or other funding mechanisms.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hamby. Commissioner Evans.
Yes, I've been saving this. Sorry for my procedural
That's all right. No.
missteps here.
We're still
but,
learning our procedures here.
But I think maybe this would be good for all of us, and we've talked about this a little bit in some of our study sessions. I was concerned when I first was placed on the Transportation Commission that there might be a conflict of interest when things from my neighborhood came up. And I think Dave and I chat about it a little bit, and, Dave told me to, your words, kind of relax about it a little bit and, see how things did develop. But the more I thought about it, it seemed that passing on a discussion or a vote, I'd kind of be taking an easy way out. And I think that, the more I thought about it, I should, feel comfortable, within my own neighborhood. And I think the fact that we're all living in neighborhoods, we're all going to be dealing with stuff like this. Maybe not as sensitive as the issue that came up tonight, but I think this is a good example of a learning curve for all of us and how we deal with stuff that's, next door. And literally for me, I am next door because I live in the 1700 block of Mississippi. And the folks that are out here tonight are my friends and neighbors. And, I think I want to be real transparent about all of this when I make my comments, which are going to be very brief. And I think we'll have a lot more to talk about when July comes around. But with respect to a conflict of interest, if I ever feel like there is one, I can't think of a good example now, but if there is, I'll be pretty quick to pass and, let our associates here, take the lead on something if that would make sense. But I can't really come up with a good example that I could cite at this stage in the game. But lastly, regarding that, part of what I want to say tonight is that even though, the folks here tonight are my friends and neighbors, it really has little, if anything, to do with how I feel about this issue at the moment. And I think that allows me to kind of separate, what some may think might be a conflict of interest to how I actually feel about this. I've stated, and we've talked a lot about, what we're all about as a commission. And we do vote, we do make recommendations, but I think our real value has more to do with the discussions. I think the suggestion tonight that Mark made was just a good example of, you know, taking things to the commission that I think the vote is kind of secondary to the content of the discussion and, you know, the value of what we're sending on. And I think that that would be particularly true in the case with the 18th and Indiana intersection. Sounds like we will have this on the agenda in July, and I think that's good. And personally, I'd like to get more information from Chuck and Nick and Dave and others as soon as we can, so we can all look at this in enough detail so we're not sitting in here on July 10th hearing things for the first time and asking a lot of questions and, you know, kind of, you know, trying to figure this out. So this is an example, I think, where the public comment has just been a huge benefit for us to hear what folks are thinking and giving us some advance notice that this is something we really need to dig into. And I think if I were sitting on the city commission, I'd be looking at this group to really help out in evaluating this particular issue. The things that I'd like to see more of would include a simple statement. I know there's a professional engineering opinion that will be relevant and important. And we've heard a little bit about that. I think we need to hear more about that. I'm sure there are manuals and standards and guidelines that you all would use as professional engineers, and I'd be interested in looking at those same documents and getting a better feel for, you know, exactly how your engineering conclusions may end on this matter. And so that would be something I'd like to see. And then also along that would be any reference ADA guidelines for the visually impaired. I think we have a lot to learn about that. I know I do in my world, in my past world, and even today. But you know, manuals and standards and guidelines in ADA references that would be applicable to you know, this particular situation, I think would be really good for us. It'd be good for everybody out there too, to understand that. And a key question for me, I've been thinking about this, being a neighbor and a member of this commission, but a key question for me is, would adding stop signs at this location make the intersection less safe for other users or for all users? And to me, that, you know, it's kind of easy to debate, okay, whether the stop signs would make it more safe or not. My question is, will they make it less safe? And if they don't, or if we actually don't think they do, then I think that can be a big guide for ultimately, you know, putting our finger on something that we can make a decision on. And lastly, you know, I grew up in the era of father knows best. I see a few people around here that probably are in that era too, and I think that in this case I'm going to go with mother knows best. And, you know, that's where I'm at this stage in the game, and I think that's for now, and I'm not, you know, trying to wiggle out of this at all, because that's really how I feel, is that's the most important thing here. But I do want to see this in the context of engineering conclusions, really to be firm in my own mind, and hopefully in all of our minds, what the right thing to do here is. So thanks for listening to that, and I hope that's helpful.
I see things actually from a non-engineering standpoint, because I'm so far from math that I can't even add 2 plus 2. I see things from a social work standpoint, and from a my job is actually to assess folks with disabilities and things like that. And just from a personal opinion, I live near there, and when I drive to work during school hours, I'm assuming it's the same gentleman. I see him walking every day by himself to school, and in my mind I go, that's amazing that he's, you know, and so to me it's more about the independence piece and the fact that he is able to have the ability to be independent, which is huge for folks to be able to continue to be independent despite whatever disabilities any of us might have. And so I'm kind of an out-of-the-box kind of thinker, and thinking that, you know, if their stop sign's already there and you're not, it's not gonna hurt anything to not change it. If it gives him the independence he needs, even though it's one person on this, that's just my opinion. So, from a non-engineering standpoint, out-of-the-box person.
When would the 18th and Indiana project let?
Yeah, it's under construction currently. It led in end of April, I believe.
So when would it be accepted, finished?
By early August.
Okay. And the stop signs are in place now?
They are, except for where they have the road closed. They may have been, they've been taking them out as they're reconstructing things. So I think they've finished maybe one intersection and moved on to the second. I haven't been over there the last couple of weeks, but yeah, so I would jump in and say from the technical side or the engineering side on the standards and getting data and warrants as far as traffic volumes go to warrant four-way stop signs or two-way stop signs, we won't have that data by July because the intersections are closed, and we would want to see after they're open for a period of time, you know, what the traffic volumes are, how many crashes have happened. So we won't have all of that data by July, but we can bring back some options and some feedbacks and some background on why we recommended what we did, and any data that we do have, we can bring that back. So
there is one thing I'd be concerned about on the technical side. Right now you have a condition where you have a four-way stop and you have a traffic control device in the middle, traffic calming device in the middle. That's what you'd be leaving in place. So if you left those in place now through the new construction, you would be leaving the current condition. If you take them out and then put them back in, you'll have had it open for a while and you'll be changing the condition. Now, that's something we'd be talking about really, if we were leaving it for Luther, you'd only be doing it for a year anyway.
Actually, the intersection is going through a major reconstruction. The curb lines are being reconfigured. Right. This is so narrow, Mark,
but at the end of the day, you're going to have a traffic calming circle, not a roundabout, in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's the important difference, because for a roundabout, you would not have stop signs.
Correct. You'd have a yield sign.
Traffic calming device, it's kind of nebulous.
Well, the point I was going to make is the stop signs are probably going to have to come out just for the construction to get all the sewer work done. So I don't think you're going to have any option.
While the sewer's there, while the sewer cut's there, you're not driving over it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of.
Open for traffic,
yeah.
you have a stop sign.
I think it's kind of a technicality.
I'll just throw out another perspective. The city's spending substantial dollars on an improvement that the neighborhood wanted. And we went through a big process, and Steve, you were instrumental in proceeding with that. The question is, if we could have done it for $75 in stop signs, why are we spending the tens of thousands of dollars on the improvement? It's just another side to think about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we present these traffic calming solutions to the commission, we always get asked those questions. Can't we just do a stop sign?
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely appreciate, and you know, make it temporary for a year. Is that a big deal? No. But again, if we could have done it with a stop sign, why are we spending the money now? Maybe that discussion should have been had before the commission, before we went to the commission and all the neighbors and got this consensus to do the project.
The neighborhood was told that would have to stay, we had no choice. This is what the neighborhood was told. We had no choice. If we were told that the device, with the old device, the current device, the one that has been sitting there for a dozen years, would not come down, and the improvement would never be made. We'd just be in limbo with no money to do what hasn't been done for the last 12 years. So unfortunately, because of that, we went forward. We had the neighborhood was carefully polled with a survey monkey, and people decided they preferred to have the calming circles replaced with something up to date that wasn't falling apart. We accepted the need to do that, but we were also told that there would be the ability to protect Luther later on, that Brandy could bring this up again. And she has, and now we really want to know what you guys are going to do about it, because Luther walks to school basically in the dark, and there's a lot of traffic around there, and we'd like to be sure Luther is protected.
So Dave, are you able to present something on July 10th about this?
Yeah, we'll present what we can present, and then then the commission can make a recommendation to change the stop control intersection with the final. Well, after the project is complete, we could make an adjustment if you direct us to.
But meanwhile, the stop signs only came down a week ago, and they still exist, and they're still for free. We wouldn't have to spend any money putting them back up, other than what it costs to put stop signs that we already have, put them back on the posts. And the posts have to be, as Steve points out, at a new location, because the road has been considerably widened now, even though it's a forest of mud.
Well, I'm just going to add one brief comment here, and that is, this intersection should be open to traffic by the end of June, according to Sunflower. So, the whole project isn't going to be done until the 1st of August, but this particular intersection was the first one that we did, that you all did. And
but you don't want to put the signs back up because that'll interfere with the collection of data. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, if we're talking
Dave, is
about
that-
having it done by the end of June, I would just strongly get on my knees and beg you all right now to just please
Okay.
put the stop signs back up before you open. Like you said, Mr. Hurd,
Dave, if we go
what's the point
to July 10,
of opening it for a
Are
few
you-
weeks and then having a problem?
is the July 10 a time when we would decide to put up a stop sign, or just a time to, I guess tell me what would happen on July 10th? if
Well, we could
wait
bring
for-
this back as a regular agenda item that we would make a staff recommendation, and then you could provide direction to either concur or deny our recommendation and recommend a four-way stop be installed.
It would be a recommendation to the city commission, at which time the city commission would have to, or it has to be an ordinance in order for it to be enforceable.
Okay.
So it has to be passed by the commission.
One thing we're gonna ask, who here is gonna vote not to have a stop sign there?
I can't say that yet. We haven't heard enough information. I want to hear staff recommendation on what they want to say. I mean, I think it's short-sighted to make a decision without having input from staff other than what we have so far.
But this isn't clearly covered in MUCTD.
I'm sorry?
This isn't clearly covered in MUCTD, is it?
It is, there's some history here. I think we'd have to go back and look at when the stop signs were installed. I think they were installed that they didn't meet the warrants for a four-way stop, but, that's the engineering side of it. And then they were installed, and then subsequently, the traffic circles, the blocks were out there either before or after. They've been out there for a long time. So we have to go back and look at some of the data and the timeline on all of that. We can bring all that information back to you. But again, it is a new intersection in a way. We would still want to look at the guidelines from the MUTCD, at least to those are general guidelines that, that are for consideration. They don't have to be followed. There's some engineering judgment and community judgment too that factors in. We have a lot of unwarranted stop signs in Lawrence, so we can bring all that information back. Just to, go back throughout the process, we did have this come up in the discussions in the meetings, and kind of like Chuck said, we said, well, if we were going to keep the four-way stops, we wouldn't expend the expense for the traffic circles. This whole project's $200,000. If those were really working, we wouldn't expend the expense to do the traffic circle. So our recommendation back through those meetings, the neighborhood meetings, was that we would, if we did want to go with the traffic circles, which we ultimately decided to do, that we could come back and relook after they were installed, to make a request to see if we wanted to make any changes for whatever reason, that we would reevaluate it. So we're kind of jumping that because we're still under construction, but we are still willing to bring it back to a regular agenda item and get some direction one way or the other, or the direction could be to wait another month or whatever it is, but we can bring back that staff memo in more detail in July and then proceed from there.
Well, I think that you all have handled this really well. And I think that we understood that we could revisit this issue now. And that's what we're doing. I mean, it's really, everybody expected we'd be sitting here having this discussion. So I think it's been handled, pretty appropriately by everybody that's at the table here.
I do think, I'm pretty sure there was a four-way stop there.
So this item is going to be put on our agenda for July. I just appreciate the public could respect the way we conduct our business. Is there any other commission item tonight?
One other item, and this is maybe for Dave, and this might help Commissioner Evans' concern about conflict of interest. Dave, could you check again with the city attorney? My recollection is that 5 or 6 years ago, she issued I don't remember who it was at the time, issued a statement saying that advisory boards were not subject to conflict of interest policies because we were not policy-making bodies. So that might help your concern. Because it's come up, it came up before on the Traffic Commission, and I know they issued a citywide bulletin to that effect. And I just think all of us should see that if that is still accurate.
Okay. Can you send that out to all of us if that's the case?
You'll probably have to find it.
Charlie, any opportunity for public comment in 3 and 4?
No, not at this item, not on this item. I have one item, if no one else has anything. Does anybody else have anything? I just like to ask if we can get information about the Manhattan ordinance for texting or use of cell phone. And if there's something happening, I know there's been work on this at the state level that perhaps hasn't gotten through the legislative process, but I would like to better understand what's even possible, and if a city in Kansas has done something that's passed any legal muster, could we get that for our review? Thank you. The calendar, our upcoming calendar shows our July 10th meeting instead of July 3rd. I assume that everyone concurred with that. Is there? All right. And then Dave also noted that there's a change in the September schedule because also of a holiday. Everybody is good with that? Okay. It normally would have been on September 4th. That's Labor Day. So it's September 11th. Yeah, actually, I'll be out of town on the September 11th date, so Chris, you'll be at the helm that day. Did you say also, Steve, you're going to be gone? Or? Oh, John, I'm sorry.
I mean, if we have we probably want to check, everybody check their schedules, because if we don't have enough for quorum, I mean, we'll have to look at another date.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I'm needed, because that was probably a school board meeting night. So if I'm not needed,
So,
I'll,
yeah.
possibly, I don't know for sure.
So can we all, if I just counted, we have 3 that are not going to be able to make it on September 11th. As long as we have 6 of us. Then we're good.
I'm wrong, I will be here the 11th.
Oh, take it back, 2.
Right now, we're good.
Okay. Well, let's just revisit that, I guess, at our next meeting, in case anybody has any change in their calendar. And then our study session on Thursday this week is about the KDOT Transportation Alternatives Program, the Lawrence Loop, and the Pedestrian Bicycle Issues Task Force. I won't be able to make it.
I'll be out of town myself.
I'll be
Yeah.
out of town,
All right.
effective tomorrow.
Everyone else all right? Okay.
So 3 aren't coming.
Dave, are you able to
Yeah.
make it to that one? That was one.
Most likely not.
Okay. So
But
who's
we'll
gonna-
have staff
Someone will
present
be
the
here?
materials,
Okay.
yeah.
That's Thursday.
That seems like a perfect one for Jessica,
Jessica and Nick.
if she's available. Okay. Anything else for the calendar? Okay, then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner Ziegelmeier motioned and seconded by Hamby. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? So adjourned. Thank you.
That's on.
What's that?